I represent a very large assembly district where it's 25,000 square miles. There's very small communities spread out through that 25,000 square miles. And for example, my children go to a school where there's 67 kids in their high school. The closest Walmart is 75 miles away, to give you a perspective on how rural it is. We have very spotty cell service in most of my district, and we have very limited internet even. The internet services are very slow, and you get knocked off a lot. So it's critical that California, if we're going to grow as a state, that they make sure that they bring along the rural areas so that those folks can be educated, can also make sure that they get their telemedicine and those types of services that are available if they have a baseline service. Well, obviously money is always very difficult to acquire. There is funds that are available that we all are charged, and there's a pool of that, and we're trying to get those funds to bring all those underserved, disadvantaged communities that I have spread all through my district. One of the biggest obstacles to the digital divide is the lines aren't in place, and so it requires resources to go out and upgrade those lines and to bring those services to very rural communities and to underserved areas. So example, where there's a lot of population, typically the private companies have come in and they've been able to build it out, and where you have not as much a population, those people get left behind because there's not enough of them to actually build out the infrastructure. But there has been, each one of us have paid a little bit on our bills, and that's a pool of money, and that money should be distributed out to those rural areas and bring them up to at least a baseline level before we expand on the more populated areas, giving them a higher speeds and wider service. Well, the major challenge is always in closing the digital divide is the resources out there to build out the infrastructure. And in many cases, there's the infrastructure that was paid for by the people who got their services to start with is not kept up with the technology changes. And so in the populated areas, there's enough money to and people to pay those for private companies to bring it in. In unpopulated areas, there's not enough people there to pay for it, so we need to be able to bring those that infrastructure out to them and able to bring them up to at least a baseline level where they can get those services. I believe that the role of the California Emerging Technology Fund is to make sure that we distribute those funds fairly, and that they can try to reach out and use the most common sense approach in distributing those funds so that we can get the most bang for our buck. And I would hope that that's what they would continue to focus on, is to bring those disadvantaged and underserved communities along so that they can live the quality of life that most Californians that are in the very high populated areas have available to them. I believe that the legislature to close that divide should measure the whole state and find out exactly where what is available or not available in the state, and then in the underserved areas set a baseline so that we can at least bring those folks up to a minimum baseline so that they can use a service instead of there was legislation that was proposed the last couple of sessions that would take those funds and use those funds to help and increase the width and speed for people to download movies quicker when there's parts of our state that don't have any service at all. So I think we should make sure that everybody has some base level before we increase width and speed for folks who have a higher base level already. So for example, for my wife and my own business, our internet doesn't even work well enough for us to do an online QuickBooks. So we had to go 10 miles to the nearest town, and then we actually rent an office there, and that way we can use the internet services there where it's closer to a better line and able to do services. So that impacts our business, and that's the same problem that we have with our schools and with our telehealth. We have a little rural clinic there, and so they're not able to move as fast and as wide on the speed information through there, and that's what makes it very difficult. The other problem we have in our very rural areas is we don't have we don't have transportation services that are available. So most people have to drive to where they're going to get to something. So if we had good internet or better internet connections and better technology, we could actually bring those services to them via like telemedicine, and we wouldn't have to have them travel. And so that would improve their quality of life, improve the ability to get more local jobs and be able to stay in those rural areas and live the quality of life that they want to there, same as the people do in the populated areas.